Hello, I'm Peter Vogel, Director of the IMD Global Family Business Center. I'm honored to be joined here in Lausanne by Bruce Grossman. Bruce is a fourth-generation family member of the family behind Arca Continental in Mexico. Today, we'll be discussing how his family has developed and grown the family enterprise over generations, successfully navigated through various challenges over time, and built structures to govern their family enterprise and to build a legacy for generations to come. Bruce, welcome to IMD.
Thank you, Professor.
So, Bruce, tell me, you're fourth generation, there's a long legacy, there's a long history of your family. Tell us a little bit about the origins of your family. Where did it start? How did it start? And how things have evolved since then.
The timeline is a little fuzzy, I must admit, but somewhere in the late 1800s, the great-grandfather, known as the Peter, decamped from Germany to the United States, specifically Texas, and then for some reason, he was told that the mining boom was happening in Mexico, and he figured there was an opportunity there, so he moved to the state of Zacatecas, where all the mines were going, and he decided he was going to provide them with water. So he was carting water from a source called Tehuacan. And he had a partner in that business from the Barragan family, who is now, 100 years later, our partner. But they started off as partners that long ago. So they did that business for a while, and in that process, my grandfather was already grown up, and somebody recommended that he be sent to Wharton School, right about the time that Coca-Cola was getting off the charts. And he found out, he was curious about Coca-Cola, and somewhere along the line, he went back to my great-grandfather and suggested that they go to Atlanta and find out if they would get a permit to bring Coca-Cola to Mexico. Somehow or another, they went to Atlanta. At the time, there were no franchises. They were called permits. So they got authorization. They took Coca-Cola to Mexico as a permit, and soon after that, they created the first Coca-Cola bottling plant in Mexico around 1922-4, somewhere in there. And obviously, there was first to market. We didn't have too many problems with competitors. He started bottling soft drinks and flavored water for the oil people that came to Mexico, British, Americans. And he was very successful with that product, is now still alive 120 years later, called La Pureza. My cousins kept that part of the business in Tampico, and their new bottling plant is called La Pureza. So there's some tradition left over there. The years go by, my grandfather procured then another 7 franchises in Mexico. And around in the 50s somewhere, he realized that my father was living in the United States with his own advertising company, and my uncle had just come back from the war, and he had a conversation with my grandmother. And they decided to bring their daughter back to Tampico. They needed to offer my father a job, and they moved to Tampico with a big chunk of promise of equity to my dad. So now we have the prodigal son and a son-in-law working in the business. That went well because there was a professional manager they had to report to. They didn't report directly to my grandfather. But as the years went by, the grandfather very intelligently noticed that there was a little bit of an issue going on with the son that didn't want to be there, and my father, who was eminently being very successful. Those issues came up. There was a discussion with my grandmother. I happened to have been there when that happened. And they said, we have to fix this. And sure enough, a couple of weeks later, my grandfather decided to split the business. They trimmed the tree. So half of the business 4 bottling plants went to my mother and dad, and 4 to my cousins and my uncle. And everybody from there did their own trajectory. My uncle didn't particularly grow that business. He wasn't interested in it. He kept it. He did well with it. He built other businesses along the line that my grandfather had created when he retired. He created a mega real estate business, car dealerships, investments in radio stations, TV stations, and my uncle was happy with that. Dad, however, kept asking for more. So we built up 16 bottling plants from 4 to 16. Corporate headquarters was in Tampico, and identity issues came about. So my uncle and my cousins adopted green as their color, and we adopted brown. Color Coca-Cola, according to my dad. So to this day, brown and anything in the tones of browns and anything in the greens are the way we are known in the bottling world. El Grupo Verde and El Grupo Café. Traditions happen, and they're still around all these years. As the years went by and our company grew, our particular side of the family, holding company and all of the governance structures that my father knew about, were put in place as if we were a public company. He operated like that. A tremendous amount of discipline and order and divisions, all of the structures that we've studied now, he put in place without ever having studied that. Those are visionary people. And the time came where political issues in Mexico were such that international companies were not well looked upon, imperialists. And Dad got worried about that. So about that time, one of our advisors suggested to my father that he look at listing the company.
Yeah.
We did. That was a beautiful process, but it wasn't done for any other reason other than to Mexicanize our image as an international company, transnational Coca-Cola. We all of a sudden became Mexican.
When was that?
Late 70s.
Okay.
And that resolved a big political issue. To this day, we brought that along in our planning and all of the governance structures we already had in place. There's been questions about, did it change our culture in the business? And my answer is no, it did not, because we were already structured like if we were a public company. What it did do, however, unbeknownst to us, is it would become a major issue when it came time for my sister and I to take over. And the question was, what do we do now to grow the company? We covered 89–90% of the market. There was no place for us to move. The Coca-Cola company was very helpful all of these years. And they came up with the idea that they wanted to see some consolidation. My father jumped on that one. So with the help of the Coca-Cola company, we were able to buy a couple of franchises. And that worked great, expanded our business a little bit, but we weren't happy with that. Cynthia and I, my sister and I, needed to find out how we could multiply that. We didn't have much of a solution other than to do a merger. And then the search was on for who do we merge with. There were 2 big operations in Latin America. The Barragan family, they had already merged with another couple of families, and our friends across the street, FEMSA. Very institutionalized, the other one. Very family-oriented, the Barragan family. So we chose to do the merger with the Barragan family and the Arispe family. There are 2 families. Another family decided to sell out. So there are 3 families now, and we're back in partnership with a family that my great-grandfather started off as a partner with. And we brought something very important to the table, the listing.
Right.
They were not listed. So in order to do that, it took about 2 or 3 years to get all of the processes down and all of the structures, because we came in with trust, family foundation, and being listed on the stock exchange. And that was a mega change for their culture. They did not operate like that. You can imagine what that looked like back in the day. We changed all of that, or we wouldn't do the deal. So it's turned out to be a huge advantage to have been listed. And from there, we have been, thankfully, very, very successful. All the way back from the second generation, there's always professional management in. We have a no family rule. No family members are allowed to work in the business, but we do have the privilege of being able to pursue whatever passions we had.
But you're on the board.
We
Just
had
not
positions
operational.
on the board.
Yeah.
Being the eldest, it looked like primogenitor because I was the oldest one. When my sister became of age and graduated from school, she was put on the board. We had only 3 family members on the board. All the rest of them, a couple of management team members, and the rest all external, non-family members.
Right.
And that was a lot of discipline. But we had the benefit of traveling along on that beautiful journey of being on the board. We learned, obviously, a lot of lessons. I came to IMD, to the governance course. That gave me a lot of information, which my father appreciated. We put in place some of them. And especially with the committees and all of the organization that came with that, we have been very, very fortunate to have professional people that have done a magnificent job for our world, the family. As we have gone along, we instated that same policy in the merger. There were a bunch of family members working and selling insurance and selling cars and to the company. We stopped that. So I believe that that has been one of the major important decisions that were taken by my grandfather of no family in the business, running day-to-day operations. What did we have to do? We had to learn that our major decision-making powers had to consider all of the families and people that were working for us. Our major concern was our people. And no human resources, it's just the way we treated people and the way we gave them their position. To this day, I remember walking along the bottling plant with my grandfather, hand in hand, at age 7 or 8, and him stopping and saying hello to all of the employees before he got to his office. And we do that today. We stop and say hello to the people. And if nothing else, give them a smile and ask them how their families are doing, and thank you for being there. And that discipline goes still today. Along this process of the way we were dealing with our merger, again, the question came up, now what? We did all of the things that come along with a merger, and culture and all of that kind of thing is adjusted. And we had a partners meeting. We said, so what do we do now? We had an enormous amount of cash in the coffers. No more mergers in Mexico. So South America came up. We did South America, a couple of nice countries in South America. And when that got done, we kept saying, okay, now what? Then the opportunity came up for the USA. I was scared to death of that. Knowing what the culture is in the US and our culture in Mexico, I figured that was going to be an issue. So when the opportunity came up for Texas and New Mexico and Oklahoma, obviously our other neighbors wanted to play in that game too, but they got a little bit more greedy. They wanted all of California, and that was not for sale. So we jumped on the opportunity and went to the US. That has been a mega success. One of my professors from IMD is a coach for the CEO in the US. That has been very helpful. Why? Because the coach knows our history and our culture. And we had an opportunity to take the whole family to see our new bottling plant in Houston, Texas. And it was just like being in Mexico. The people were absolutely 110% happy to see the family. And I am 100% sure that the idea of families still make a big difference when they show up in their factories and do a visit with the people that are cleaning the floor. That is how the people come to respect you. We earn that every day. We need to have the people know that we respect them. And that's one of our cultural things.
Obviously, we're in this situation now. You've managed to expand and grow and evolve the business into new markets. Now, on the other side, obviously, also as a family, you are very active entrepreneurially and also thinking about the next generations, where I know there's a lot of entrepreneurial energy and investment activities. You know, obviously, since you have the strict no family rule inside the legacy business, then when you look at the evolution of family systems over time, you end up branching out and do other things, right? From an entrepreneurial point of view, from an investment point of view. Is that a little bit the culture that you also foresee into the future, that the family is entrepreneurially diversified? What's your perspective on that? And also maybe your wish into the future?
Well, my wish and my reality are two big different things. Going back to now the family business side of our operation. My transformation came about at the Leading the Family Business Seminar here in Switzerland. I was the elder, so the grandchildren weren't around. It was just me and Toyota. My sister was off to school, not still a factor. And I came back to Mexico with all of my beautiful experience of being at the family business program. And at the same time, I was creating my own company. It was curiously a consulting company managing other people's money. We were the first independent financial advisor in Mexico. And I'm saying we because there was a group of people that I invited to join me. And the Family Business Network was just getting started here in one of the two programs that I had early on assisted. The professor at the time, one of your predecessors, Ali Lank, had thought about this FBN thing, and they were thinking about how to expand it. And I told Ali, I said, would it be okay if I tried to do this in Mexico, the FBN? He said, absolutely. I said, okay, we'll invite you to be on the board. You look at it, we'll figure it out, and you can take FBN to Mexico. So I told my dad about that. And he, how does it work? And I told him more or less what it was. And he said, deal, you do that. Again, with the idea that I was doing the consulting work and the FBN and presenting to family businesses. So we did. We took FBN to Mexico. We did programs every year for about 15 years. And then I ran out of people to invite. We had all the families that we knew in Mexico that were in family businesses. My Rolodex ran out. What we didn't want to do was forget that process. So we created the idea, my manager, the FBN, to try and create a family business center in Mexico. Because it was difficult to adapt some of the European concepts to Mexico, the culture. And we thought maybe we can make it tropical and do a Mexican version of FBN Center. So we went and we started visiting all of the universities. I figured we needed a place that it could rest at. If we didn't have a sort of a college environment involved, it was going to be difficult to attract other people in the future. So we visited a bunch of universities in Mexico, and the one that said it stays here today, after 15 or 20 universities, and it's in Monterrey. So we started and created the Family Business Center at the University of Monterrey, and it's still there today, 30 years later. So we're very proud of that. And that came all as a result of having attended the Family Business Program at IMD.
So let's talk about this a little bit. So you've been at IMD now many, many times. I think first time was 35 years ago, 33 years ago, something like that.
I don't want to remember that far back, Professor, but yeah, about that.
So you've been at IMD now many, many times. You've come to family business programs, to other types of programs. Can you share a little bit, your experiences also having come back several times, how IMD has evolved and changed, and in some way also, how has your learning in the family business programs in particular shaped your own approach to your own family enterprise and your own succession, your own governance activities? Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, again, having been armed with all of these toolbox, when my father passed away, we knew the succession process. We talked about it. Dad talked to us about it. He had already organized how that was going to happen, but not until the day he was in bottling Coca-Cola, as he said, in heaven. Up to then, we couldn't touch the deal. But the day he passed away, we had a big toolbox. My sister and I both, because she heard from me all of this toolbox that I had, she went through the process of seeing my father in her last years that he was alive. She was involved in all the planning process of the trusts and the creation of the regulatory environment that we were going to be facing to have a smooth transition. So all of that came from the Family Business Center learning. At that time, my other hammer in the toolbox said I needed to get my family together. Because we were off, because of the no family rule, we were off doing things all over the place. And I wanted to bring the family back together as a unit. So, armed again with the experience from LFB, we started with the process of bringing in advisors and creating a family council and the Constitution. We had all the family involved. We had our programs going. And after about, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years, we had one of our council meetings on a beachside property somewhere, and the advisor at the time had an exercise going, and it was one of those, how are you feeling today, kind of questions. And that went on for about a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden, my sister said, we're out. My husband, my children, and me, goodbye. We knew that we had to allow that to happen. Nobody said, no, please don't, and stop. And we allowed it to go. So we decided collectively that we would try to continue. Well, we did for a while. We brought in a bunch of new consultants and new advisors, and we were doing our counsel and all of the processes that go with that. And my family decided that they wanted to stop. So we did. To me, that was a failure. Something I did wrong, or something I didn't sell the vision, or something I didn't do right, but I had to let it go. I had to allow them to do whatever they wanted to do and feel right, because you can't force that. People want to have to do and stay. And my big wish is that somewhere in the fourth and the fifth generations, they will revisit that idea. Not only for our extended family, but for their own unit families. Mm-hmm. Because now they have their own little bailiwick that they have to concern themselves with. They will have grandchildren, they will have cousins, they will have spouses. They're going to have to figure out how that works. And why not experiment it with all of us together?
And that brings me to the point. I mean, you're now here actually at IMD 3 generations. You're here with your son and your daughter-in-law, with your grandson, with your wife, and you're all learning together, right, as one important stepping stone in the right direction. And you mentioned that in your view, what happened back then for you felt like a failure, even though obviously I think there are many things that obviously went right. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here together today to actually learn together and to build a foundation for the future generations, right? So how does that make you feel now if you project backwards to that moment when you felt, oh, it was a failure, and now you're sitting here together learning again, how does that make you feel?
If I wasn't on camera, I'd probably be crying with pride. What never stopped was the love and the expression of love in the family. That never stopped. What was wrong was the structures we were trying to put in place. If I would do it over again, I'd probably do exactly the same thing because I don't have any other knowledge to put into place. But being here with my grandson and my son and my daughter-in-law, with Elsa, my wife, is nirvana. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. We still don't have the wherewithal to have events where we can get together. And this is one of them. And my son and grandson and my daughter-in-law see some positivity of using moments to gather the family. No excuse other than just, I want to be there because this is a beautiful event. So I'm very happy to hear that. I don't want to jump in there. I don't want to influence that process. I would like for them to design it themselves. However means they want to do it by, I don't have a problem. I'll be there. What I don't want to do is try to take the lead in doing this.
Yeah.
Because if it's coming from them, then they're going to be buying into the process. And that is beautiful.
And that's hugely important, that the next generation, and here you have the next two generations actually, taking the lead and taking the initiative, right? And I think that is an amazing thing. And for you to realize, okay, I'm here to support, I'm here to guide, and maybe all of the nudging and pushing, maybe at a time having been perceived more as too much, now is being realized, actually, this is actually not so bad, right? But I think it's a good approach to say, let them design their future, how they want to run things.
Yeah, well, one of the things I have to be very careful about is that I don't want to be perceived as being nonchalant about it and not caring. And all that. I'm a rah-rah kind of guy. So my process in my mind that I'm going to have to do is applaud this every day I can and know that I'm behind it 100%, whatever they want. We have the privilege of being able to do whatever they want to do. I'm not talking about resources financially. I mean, we have any kind of support we need to make that happen, we can make it happen. And so my communication issue now is to try to figure out if I'm communicating with them that I'm 100% behind it. We have many examples of people that don't know how to communicate that. And I'm hoping I'm not one of the statistics,
It's never easy, but it's always a good opportunity to learn and to reflect.
Absolutely.
And to ask for feedback.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I don't have to ask very much. I get it for free. Feedback is critical here, and I get it sometimes, but probably not the way I'd like to get it. I'm okay with getting some bad feedback. I can handle that. And I don't know if there's respect or there's whatever there may be. I'm encouraging today, and they're sitting here listening to me, to come and kick my butt. I'm okay with that. I am. I'll take positive, hopefully it's constructive criticism. Well, I'll slap in the face, I'm not too sure about it. But constructive criticism, I'll take.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of being in a room together, 3 generations, having the ability to talk about some of the things. On the one side, learn from the past, but most importantly, looking ahead and creating the future. How do we want to function together? Even also across with the branch of your sister and the cousins over there, right? How do we want to do things together? What do we want to do together? What do we want to do separately? And really designing the future of the family enterprise system in a holistic way, with the legacy company, the philanthropic activities, the entrepreneurial activities. There's a lot of momentum in the family from what I feel. Bruce, thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being such a great supporter.
Que Dios te cuide mucho. May God bless you
Muchas
and
gracias.
the project. Thank you.